Alright, so continuing on the topic of holes, we're just going to delete the cube and Shift A, insert a circle. The circle has 32 verts around, as we can see in the F9 menu. And we're just going to tab into edit mode, extrude, bring it in, press F to fill it. In fact, I'm going to offset the loop one more just with an inset. And we're just going to select this top face and look at it and just press Q, dice. And by pressing V, we can go over to view dice, and I'm just rolling in a few sections, just looking at basically my center points because that's what we're going to be mirroring across. So let's just go in and begin making our selection, and we'll begin having some fun with circles once again, this time in a more circular format. So basically this is our selection. We can just shift click circle to use the alternative algorithm, and we'll just roll it in until we have just one additional section being added, and click to apply. And it looks like we accidentally got a little bit of a nested selection happening, so we're just going to need to deselect all of these irrelevant faces because they're not needed for us. And from here we can just press I and perform an inset, and from here I can just tell you that the next 20 operations I'm going to be doing is going to be joining areas to form connections. So instead of just selecting things and pressing J, let us just shift click mark to go into select tool, and if we press J, we're in join tool. So now we can just consecutively use the join operation over and over to form all of these connections, which is just a lot easier than selecting a point, selecting another point, and pressing J. Sometimes I feel that I neglect discussing these things as much as they should be, and reminding people that they exist. Also, we see that we have a few additional points because I wasn't as observant about the creation as I should have been, but we'll just go back and make corrections to it. Just roll with the punches, even though that is kind of icky to have happen. In fact, why are we even working on the opposite side? So for this, I'm just going to place a loop here. Let's turn on vertimergy, and we can just make this connection, even though this kind of breaks the circle a little bit. It'll be fine. And so because Mesh Machine is still taking over from my edit mode, I can just Alt-X and just gesture over. Even fill these in using a little bit of that classic J we were talking about, even though working on the opposite sides of mirror is just something I gotta stop myself from doing. So from here, let's shift click mark again. This time let's go into merge. And merge also has the ability for users to hold shift and actually form connections. So we can select a point, merge it, but we can also just shift click in order to form a connection, because sometimes you need a connection in order to perform a proper merger. For example, with that area we didn't want to merge, we wanted to make a connection. Still getting used to the idea of making connections. You know, we might have to actually make it a different color whenever it occurs. Something isn't completely right in this area, but instead let's cancel the operation, and we're just going to grab here, form a connection there. And it doesn't have to be perfect, but it does need to at least make somewhat sense so it flows good. So here we've already, completed everything up, and we're pretty much done, in all honesty. In fact, I'm going to try to select this area and then Shift G, select perimeter, and pay dirt with our selection. We can press I to inset and protect this area. Then we can just extrude this down, and we'll press I in order to protect that area as well. And before we begin kind of sewing things up, we do want to do a couple of last mergers. For example, we could turn that into a quad, remerge, and just taking a look at what we have. There's a couple of areas where I see connections just not being built. And it doesn't have to be perfect, but we definitely want to get it as good as possible. That way we have as much control over it as is needed. But when it comes to flatties, I'm pretty lenient whenever it comes to subdivision solving. So now I press Control 1, 2, 3 to jump through my layers of subdivision, just looking at what we're getting on various levels. We also want to shade this as smooth. I can extrude the side down And let's also press P while beveling in order to adjust our profile. We can press A to go back to adjusting our bevel, but when you're looking at subdivision edit mode, it can be a little hard to really follow what's going on. So normally I have subdivision off, but just like that, we have now created this circular great formation, just getting in and just playing with some of the basics of just HardOps. And really, this video is even shorter than the other ones, even though there are some areas that I see that could use just a little bit of refinement. For example, right here, we just want to send this point over to meet it. However, we may want to have something in the center just to be a better junction point instead of what we were about to offer it initially. In fact, there I am doing double work again. Just got to get rid of those double junction points whenever they occur. And then, you know, if I see an area that's just unresolved, we might as well just fill that in and remirror it to the other side. But just like that, we can wrap this video up. Just a quick adventure, just playing with circles and a little bit of HardOps.